Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the authority, the Finance Authority of Maine. You're watching Mainebiz Sunday, Maine's business news source.
We're here today to discuss the 2010 Measures of Growth Report for Maine. With us today we have Laurie Lachance, President and CEO of Maine Development Foundation, which prepares the Measures of Growth report. Tony Payne, Executive Director of the Alliance for Maine's Future. Senator Chris Rector, the ranking Republican on the Legislature's Joint Standing Committee on Business, Research, and Economic Development, and a member of the Maine Economic Growth Council. And Betsy Biemann, President of the Maine Technology Institute. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Glad you could be here. It's so exciting. Every year I wait for the report to come out. And, I like to tell people that I am one of those data geeks that we were talking about, and I haven't met a pie chart that I don't like. I don't know if it's because I look like pie, but anyhow. So I'm always excited to get this, and so I think it's a very reliable set of objective data, too, for us to use to talk about. The question, though, then we're going to talk about today is how useful is it for policymakers and business people and that kind of thing as we go forward. So the report is made up of, I think it has 24 indicators, and it's broken down into sections. The section on the economy, which deals with prosperity, business innovation, skilled and educated workforce, and business climate. Community section, which deals with indicators for civic assets, disparities, which means disparity in poverty and gender income gap, and the health and safety section. And then the section that deals with the environment, which has indicators for preservation, stewardship, and access. So, Laurie, I'm going to turn to you first, since you're with the head of the Maine Development Foundation. Tell us about how the Measures of Growth report is produced, who gets to be on this group that sets these indicators, and how's it paid for, all those kind of things, real briefly.
Sure. Well, the Maine Economic Growth Council was created in statute shortly after that deep recession of the early 90s, when the state government for the first time saw consecutive years where revenues went down. It was the first time in our history we'd experienced that. And they realized they were missing a source of reliable information. And out of that came this entity, the Growth Council, which is appointed in a three-way appointment by the Governor, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House. There are 19 members named in statute, and it's everything from labor to education to 4 legislators and the Commissioner of DECD, a wide variety of folks from very different backgrounds to put together this nonpartisan assessment of how we're doing.
Okay, good. Before we get into the deep down into the weeds of all the data here, which we love to do, I want to kind of take that 30,000-foot view first and kind of get your general impression. I guess the way I like to put it is, if this was the company's annual report and you were a shareholder and you got this annual report as a stockholder, how would you feel about the company Maine Inc., I guess? Would you want to, is it a good investment? You're going to keep those in stocks? You're going to sell them? You're going to hold? What are you going to do? So, Tony, I'm going to start with you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I would put it on a sell list.
Okay.
There's nothing in this report that I feel is a long-term play. This is taking us in a fundamentally different direction and moving us toward those fundamental national averages that make our franchise. We have one of 50 franchises. Okay. Our franchise isn't going to perform well in the near term or even in the foreseeable future unless these numbers start moving in a different direction.
Okay, so the overall impression of the report from you is that not good?
Not good.
Okay, good. Betsy, let's go to you. What do you think? What's your general impression? And also because I know that you're out there dealing with so many businesses, startup businesses and well-established businesses in the state. How do they think they see this as well?
Well, in the R&D area, I think there are 2 messages. One is that Maine remains at about 1% of gross state product being represented by research and development across the board, as opposed to 3%, which is the goal. There's also recently been another report, the R&D evaluation, where they said, gee, our past investments have helped Maine get in the game, but now we need to take it to the next level. And I'd say that's a reflection of where we are here as well. At the same time, though, over the last decade or so, Maine has gone from 46th to 38th compared to other states in terms of our R&D sector. So we've been making some improvements in comparison to other states, but we need to keep pushing both of those numbers up.
Okay, mixed bag for you, sounds like. Okay, good. Chris, Senator, how about you?
Mixed bag for me, too, but I'd have to say you can't be in politics without being an optimist. You have to think that you're going to be making a positive difference on what's going on in the state, and I think we've made some very small incremental changes. We've also done some incremental damage along the way, and I think it's essential that we really focus on moving all the indicators in a positive direction. So that should really be our focus.
Okay. Okay.
And Alan, I think there's another point as well, and we may get to this a little later, but the challenge with data like this is it's always lagging what's happening today.
We are going to talk about that.
And so there is, Maine has made a $50 million investment in research and economic development through the Maine Technology Asset Fund, and we have planted some terrific seeds. We're starting to see the seedlings come up, but it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. We're going to be seeing the return on investment come over time.
Okay.
And I will use an example, and that was actually the competitive nature of the granting of those R&D investments that we made based on the bond that we passed the last time around, the $50 million bond. For the first time, everything was competitive. No earmarks, it really made a difference, I think, in terms of the value of that investment. So it's that kind of policy that can make a difference in the long term.
Okay. I do want to ask about, I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to ask kind of about the usefulness of this data. I mean, there is a lag. The R&D data, it's 2006 data, I think, that's in there. That's just 4 years ago. Is that useful enough? Is that current enough? Does it really tell me anything? Because you had to supplement that. Tell me, well, wait a minute, there's some new stuff.
Right.
So do policymakers, is this helpful to them? And business leaders, is this helpful to them? And are we doing the right kinds of comparisons too? So I just want to talk about in general, before we get into the detail, how good is this data in terms of really making decisions? I don't know. Tony, I'm going to go back to you.
You know, the measures, I think, have great consistency, and the fact that we're still coming off of the same foundation and measuring progress one way or the other, to me, is the right way to go, just in terms of policy.
Looking at the trend lines?
At the trend lines.
Okay.
And so as we go through the next 3 or 4 years and these numbers begin to evolve, we'll know, have we made good decisions today? And that's a good rearview mirror to work from, because nobody can really tell the road ahead.
But what about the volatility? I mean, just the Great Recession, that's what we're calling it. It really is the Great Recession, and we're coming out of it. It changed everything, and it happened seems to happen quickly. Everyone's focused on the latest indicator. Does that matter? Does that change what this report should be, Laurie?
I think this report has to stand alone as something different.
I knew you'd think
because I've been in and around state government some and been studying Maine's economy for over 26 years now. And if we act in the moment on the current information, we won't make the appropriate decisions for long-term growth. And that's what this report looks at. It looks at the long term. It's not meant to solve today's problem, and it's not meant to be kind of a report card of what choices have been made in the last 12 to 15 months. Those will prove out over time whether they're successful or not. This report gets to fundamentals, and if we don't have the fundamentals in place, we won't sustain for the long term.
Okay.
And we start to talk about this being a lens for legislators to use, to sort of look at this, hold this up and say, what are we doing in legislation that is moving us in an affirmative direction in terms of the measures? What are we doing that's making a difference?
Yep. Are they using it? Are policymakers actually using this? And can you point to a specific example of how this report has been used for legislative or larger policy making?
Some are and some aren't, I will say. That's true with probably all data that we receive.
Sure.
And I will go back to the example that I just gave about the R&D piece, because I think we specifically made a concerted effort to change the way we looked at R&D, how we were focusing on it, and I would say that the people on the committee I sit on, Business Research and Economic Development, use this all the time and point to that and use that as the basis for which we sort of strengthen the R&D requests to our colleagues.
Okay.
In fact, the Committee on Maine's Prosperity, that was in a legislative
couple of years ago.
One of their primary recommendations is that every legislative proposal should be tied back to how it will affect the indicators and the measure of growth.
Okay. Okay. We're going to wrap this segment for right now, but then we're going to come back and we're going to dive right into some of the details, starting with per capita income, and then go through a bunch of the more specific indicators and get your take on all those. So stick around. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Mainebiz Sunday is brought to you by Bangor Savings Bank, where you can enjoy free ATMs worldwide.